Why Jeff Bezos left Wall Street to sell books online. Welcome back to Small Cause, Big Effect, where we explore how tiny decisions create massive transformations. Today, we're going back to 1994. Yes, 1994. Bill Clinton was president. Nobody knew what a website was. And if you wanted to buy a book, you had to physically walk into a store like some kind of medieval peasant. This was a time when going online meant your phone couldn't work, and streaming was what water did when it came out of a tap. In this ancient world of dial-up internet and floppy disks, a 30-year-old Wall Street hotshot named Jeff Bezos made a decision that his colleagues thought was either brilliant or completely insane. He was going to quit his cushy job making serious money to start a company that would sell books on this thing called the World Wide Web. Today, Amazon is worth over $1 trillion. But in 1994, Jeff Bezos was just a guy with a crazy idea, a garage, and the kind of optimism that makes you wonder if successful entrepreneurs are just people who never learned to be properly afraid. This is the story of how the richest man in the world started by packing books in his garage, and why sometimes the best business decisions look like the worst life choices. This is exactly the kind of small cause that creates a big effect. And if stories like this fascinate you as much as they fascinate me, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we dive deep into these transformational moments every single week. Act 1. The Golden Handcuffs. Life on Wall Street. Let's start with where Jeff Bezos was in 1994, because context is everything. This wasn't some college dropout tinkering in his dorm room. This was a man who had achieved what many would consider the American Dream Wall Street edition. Bezos was a senior vice president at D.E. Shaw Company, one of the most prestigious hedge funds in New York. And when I say prestigious, I mean the kind of place where people's business cards are made of actual gold and the office coffee probably costs more than most people's rent. This wasn't just any job. This was the kind of position that comes with a salary so large you need an accountant just to count it. D.E. Shaw was pioneering something called quantitative trading, using computer models and algorithms to make investment decisions. Basically, they were teaching computers to make money, which in 1994 was about as cutting edge as you could get. It was like being a wizard, except instead of casting spells, you were casting profit margins. And Jeff Bezos? He was one of their star wizards. At 30 years old, he was already making more money than most people see in a lifetime. He had job security, respect from his peers, and a clear path to becoming even wealthier. He was living the kind of life that makes other people's parents say, "Why can't you be more like Jeff?" But here's the thing about Jeff Bezos that would define everything that came next. He wasn't content with just being successful. He was curious, dangerously curious, the kind of curious that makes you read statistics about internet growth for fun. And the statistics he was reading in 1994 were absolutely wild. The internet was growing at 2,300% per year. Let me put that in perspective. If your height grew at 2,300% per year, you'd go from being 6 feet tall to being 138 feet tall by Christmas. The internet wasn't just growing, it was exploding like a digital Big Bang. Now, most people looked at these numbers and thought, that's interesting. Jeff Bezos looked at these numbers and thought, this is the future, and I'm going to be late to the party if I don't leave right now. Act 2. The Eureka Moment. The Regret Minimization Framework. So there's Jeff Bezos, successful Wall Street executive, looking at internet growth statistics when he has what entrepreneurs call an aha moment and what everyone else calls a midlife crisis 2 decades early. He starts thinking about what kind of business would make sense on this thing called the internet. And this is where Bezos's analytical mind really shows itself. He doesn't just randomly pick something. He creates what he calls a regret minimization framework. Now, this sounds very fancy and technical, but it's basically just asking yourself one question. When I'm 80 years old, sitting in a rocking chair, what will I regret more, trying and failing, or never trying at all. It's the kind of framework that sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but most people never actually apply it to their lives. Most of us are too busy being afraid of failing to worry about regretting not trying. But Bezos takes this framework and applies it to his situation. On one hand, he could stay at DE Shaw, make lots of money, climb the corporate ladder, and retire wealthy and comfortable. Safe choice, smart choice, boring choice. On the other hand, he could quit his job, use his life savings to start an internet company, probably fail spectacularly, and end up as a cautionary tale about Wall Street executives who watched too much science fiction. Using his regret minimization framework, Bezos realized something crucial. He could live with failing at starting a company. Lots of people fail at starting companies, but he couldn't live with being 80 years old and wondering what if about missing out on the internet revolution. And that's when he decided what product to sell online. Books. Act 3. Why books? The perfect product for an imperfect world. When host. Now, you might be wondering why books. In 1994, you could theoretically sell anything online. Clothes, electronics, food, cars, pets. Okay, maybe not pets, but you get the idea. So why did Jeff Bezos look at the infinite possibilities of e-commerce and think, you know what people really need? A website that sells books. The answer shows just how strategically brilliant Bezos was, even when he looked completely crazy. First, books are perfect for shipping. They don't break easily, they don't spoil. They come in standard sizes and they're not too heavy. Compare that to selling, say, furniture online in 1994. Yes, I'd like to order a couch. What? It'll arrive in 47 pieces and I need to assemble it myself? And if it breaks during shipping, I get kindling instead of furniture. Where do I sign up? Second, books have something that was revolutionary for 1994 infinite selection. The biggest bookstore in the world at that time might have 150,000 titles, but online, Bezos realized he could offer millions of books. Every book that was in print, plus books that were out of print, plus books that hadn't even been written yet. It was like promising people a library the size of a small country. Third, and this is the genius part, books were perfect for the internet because they solve a real problem. In 1994, if you wanted a specific book, you had to hope your local bookstore had it. If they didn't, they could order it for you, and you'd get it in maybe 2 weeks if you were lucky. Bezos was promising people any book delivered to their door faster than traditional bookstores could manage. But here's what really made books perfect. They're what economists call a low consideration purchase. This means people don't agonize over buying them. It's not like buying a car where you need to test drive it and check under the hood. With books, you read a description, maybe a review, and you buy it. Perfect for online shopping when people were still terrified of typing their credit card numbers into a computer. And finally, books have passionate customers. Book lovers don't just buy books, they collect them, recommend them, talk about them. They were the perfect early adopters for online shopping because they were always looking for new titles and rare finds. Act 4. The Great Resignation. Telling your boss you're leaving to sell books. So now Bezos has his plan, his product, and his regret minimization framework. All he needs to do is quit one of the best jobs on Wall Street to start a company that doesn't exist yet, selling products online to customers who barely know what online means. Easy, right? Picture this conversation. Bezos walks into his boss's office at DE Shaw. This is David Shaw, one of the most successful hedge fund managers in the world. And Bezos says, "Hey David, thanks for this amazing job and all the money, but I'm going to quit to start an internet bookstore." Now, David Shaw wasn't some out-of-touch executive. He was a smart guy who understood technology. But even he thought Bezos had lost his mind. Shaw actually tried to talk him out of it. He said, "Jeff, this internet thing sounds interesting, but you already have a great career. Why don't you think about it for 48 hours? It's like when your friend tells you they're quitting their job to become a professional juggler and you say, 'That's interesting. maybe sleep on it? But Bezos had already made up his mind. He'd run the numbers, analyzed the market, and applied his regret minimization framework. The internet was growing too fast, and the opportunity was too big. If he waited, someone else would do it first. Shaw, to his credit, was actually supportive once he realized Bezos was serious. He even said, "You know what? This is a great idea, but it's a better idea for someone who doesn't already have a good job." Which is probably the nicest way anyone has ever said, "You're making a terrible mistake, but I respect your right to make it." So in 1994, Jeff Bezos officially resigned from D.R. Shaw Company. His colleagues threw him a farewell party. Some thought he was brave. Others thought he was crazy. Most thought they'd never see him again, except maybe in a few years when he came back asking for his old job. Instead, they created a legend. Because sometimes the difference between being crazy and being a genius is just waiting to see how the story ends. Act Viv, the garage days. Cadabra to Amazon. Now comes the part of the story that every startup founder knows by heart, the garage phase. Except Jeff Bezos' garage story has a twist that makes it even more ridiculous. Bezos and his wife Mackenzie decided to drive from New York to Seattle. Not fly, drive. Because when you're starting an internet company, apparently the first step is a cross-country road trip. It's like the opposite of a honeymoon. Instead of relaxing on a beach, you're driving 3,000 miles to start a business that might not work. But here's the beautiful part: Bezos was so excited about his idea that he couldn't wait until they got to Seattle. He started writing the business plan in the passenger seat while Mackenzie drove. Picture this: crossing the country, laptop balanced on his knees, writing code and business plans while watching America roll by through the windshield. It's the most entrepreneurial road trip in history. They end up in Bellevue, Washington, in a house with a garage that would become one of the most famous garages in business history. This garage wasn't glamorous. It had concrete floors, no heating, and was so small that Bezos had to move his car out every morning just to have room to pack books. And what did he call this revolutionary internet bookstore? Cadabra, as in abracadabra, which sounds magical until you realize that every time he told someone the name over the phone, they heard cadaver. Nothing says "buy books from us" quite like accidentally naming your company after dead bodies. Fortunately, someone pointed this out before he printed business cards. So Bezos went back to the drawing board and came up with Amazon. Not after the shopping website we know today, but after the river. The Amazon River, the biggest river in the world for the biggest bookstore in the world. Plus, it started with A, which meant it would show up first in alphabetical listings. Strategic thinking, even in naming. The early days in that garage were exactly what you'd expect from a startup that was basically one guy with a laptop and a dream. Bezos was the CEO, the chief technology officer, the warehouse manager, and the shipping department. He packed every single order himself, on his hands and knees on that concrete garage floor. Now, I know what you're thinking: this story is incredible. But how does it connect to the bigger picture of business transformation? Well, that's exactly what we explore every week here on Small Cause Big Effect. If you're enjoying this deep dive into how one decision in a garage changed the entire world economy, you're going to love our other episodes. Hit that like button if this story is resonating with you, and make sure you're subscribed, because we release new episodes every week that will completely change how you think about success and decision making. Act 6. The first customer. Shipping books and shipping dreams. Amazon's first customer ordered a book called Fluid Concepts and Creative Analogies by Douglas Hofstadter, which is possibly the most perfectly nerdy first purchase in internet history. It's like the universe was saying, yes, this internet bookstore thing is going to work, and it's going to be populated entirely by people who read books about fluid concepts. But here's what makes this first sale legendary. Bezos didn't just ship the book. He hand-delivered it himself. He got in his car, drove to the customer's house, and personally delivered the first Amazon order. It wasn't efficient, it wasn't scalable, but it was personal. The richest man in the world once knocked on someone's door to deliver a book about creative analogies. And this became the pattern for early Amazon. Every order was an event. Bezos and his small team, which initially included his parents, who invested $300,000 of their own money, would pack books during the day and ship them in the evening. They turned book packing into a social activity, playing music, talking about the future, treating each box like it was carrying their dreams to customers around the world. But the real magic happened when orders started coming in from places Bezos had never heard of. Small towns across America, international customers, people who couldn't get these books anywhere else. Each order validated his crazy idea a little bit more. Within the first month, Amazon had shipped books to all 50 states and 45 countries. Remember, this is 1995. Most people didn't even have email addresses yet, and here's Jeff Bezos shipping books to customers around the world from his garage in suburban Seattle. The growth was exponential. Month 1, a few dozen orders. Month 2, hundreds. Month 6, thousands. By the end of the first year, Amazon had sold books to customers in all 50 states and 45 countries, generating $511,000 in revenue. Not profit revenue. Bezos was still losing money on every sale, but he was losing money faster than anyone had ever lost money selling books, which in startup terms counts as success. Act 7. Scaling the impossible. From garage to warehouse. By 1996, it became clear that the garage wasn't going to cut it anymore. When you're packing thousands of books a month and your warehouse is the space where most people park their cars, it's time to think bigger. See ya. But scaling Amazon wasn't just about finding a bigger space. Bezos was trying to solve problems that no one had ever solved before. How do you manage inventory for millions of books? How do you ship efficiently to customers everywhere? How do you provide customer service for people you'll never meet? These weren't just business problems, they were engineering problems. And Bezos approached them like an engineer, not a bookseller. For example, traditional bookstores ordered books based on what they thought would sell. But Amazon could use data. They could track what people were actually buying, what they were searching for, what they were recommending to friends. It was like having a crystal ball that showed you exactly what customers wanted before they even knew they wanted it. So this data-driven approach became Amazon's secret weapon. While traditional bookstores were guessing what to stock, Amazon was using algorithms to predict demand. It was Moneyball for books, except instead of finding undervalued baseball players, they were finding undervalued book titles. But the real breakthrough came when Bezos realized that Amazon wasn't really a bookstore at all. It was a logistics company that happened to sell books. The books were almost secondary to the real innovation, which was figuring out how to get any product to any customer anywhere in the world as quickly and cheaply as possible. This realization would eventually turn Amazon into everything from a cloud computing company to a grocery delivery service. But it all started with that fundamental insight. The internet doesn't just let you sell things differently, it lets you think about business completely differently. By 1997, Amazon went public. The company that started in a garage was now worth hundreds of millions of dollars on paper. Jeff Bezos, the guy who quit his Wall Street job to sell books online, was suddenly one of the richest people in America. Act 8. The long game. Thinking in decades. But here's where the Jeff Bezos story gets really interesting, because most people would have stopped there. You've built a successful company. You're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You've proven that your crazy idea worked. Time to buy a yacht and retire to an island somewhere, right? Wrong, because Jeff Bezos wasn't playing the same game as everyone else. While other people were thinking in quarters and years, Bezos was thinking in decades. He had a 20-year plan when most internet companies were trying to figure out what they were going to do next month. In interviews from the late 1990s, Bezos talked about Amazon like it was still just getting started. He said things like, "We're not trying to build a bookstore. We're trying to build the everything store." People thought he was being metaphorical. He wasn't. This long-term thinking is what allowed Amazon to do things that seemed insane at the time, but brilliant in retrospect, like spending billions of dollars on warehouses and delivery infrastructure when they could have just outsourced everything. Like investing in cloud computing when they were supposed to be focused on retail. Like building a voice assistant when they were supposed to be selling books. The man who left Wall Street to sell books was never really just selling books. He was building the infrastructure for the future of commerce. Books were just the Trojan horse. And this is what separates great entrepreneurs from everyone else. They don't just solve today's problems. They solve tomorrow's problems before anyone else realizes those problems exist. Bezos saw that people would eventually want to buy everything online, delivered quickly, with perfect customer service. So he built the systems to make that possible, starting with the easiest product to ship, books. By the time competitors realized what Amazon was really doing, it was too late. Amazon didn't just have a head start, they had built an entirely different game, with rules that only they understood. Conclusion: the regret minimization framework revisited. So let's go back to where we started that regret minimization framework. When Jeff Bezos was 80 years old, would he regret leaving Wall Street to start Amazon? Well, Jeff Bezos is 60 now, so we don't have to wait to find out. The man who quit his job to sell books online became the richest person in the world. Amazon became one of the most valuable companies in history, and that garage in Bellevue became a pilgrimage site for entrepreneurs around the world. But here's what I think is the real lesson of the Jeff Bezos story. It's not about the money or the success or even the business empire. It's about the courage to bet on yourself when everyone else thinks you're making a mistake. In 1994, when Bezos told people he was leaving Wall Street to sell books online, 99% of people thought he was crazy. The internet was new, e-commerce was unproven, and books seemed like the least exciting product you could possibly choose. But Bezos saw something that other people didn't see, not just the opportunity, but the timing. Timing in business is like timing in comedy. It's everything. Too early, and people aren't ready for your idea. Too late, and someone else has already done it. Bezos hit the sweet spot where the internet was just mature enough to support e-commerce, but not so mature that the market was crowded. But even perfect timing doesn't guarantee success. What made the difference was Bezos' obsession with customer experience. From that first-hand delivered book to Amazon's current same-day delivery, everything was built around one simple idea: make it easier for customers to get what they want. It sounds obvious now, but in 1994, most businesses were built around making things easier for the business, not the customer. Bezos flipped that model and built everything around customer convenience. The business would figure out how to make money. The customer experience came first. And here's the beautiful irony: the man who left the ultimate short-term thinking environment of Wall Street became the ultimate long-term thinker. While his former colleagues were focused on quarterly earnings, Bezos was building for decades. While they were optimizing for immediate returns, he was optimizing for customer lifetime value. The garage where Amazon started is still there in Bellevue. It's a normal suburban garage in a normal suburban house. There's no plaque, no monument, no sign that says the future of commerce started here. It looks exactly like thousands of other garages across America where people park their cars and store their Christmas decorations. But that's what makes it perfect. Because the future doesn't announce itself with fanfare and red carpets. It starts quietly, with one person who sees possibilities where everyone else sees problems, who's willing to trade security for opportunity, who understands that the biggest risk isn't failure, it's missing your chance to try. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you something. This story of Jeff Bezos, from Wall Street executive to garage startup founder to the richest person in the world, represents everything we talk about here on Small Cause, Big Effect. One decision, one framework, one moment of courage that changed everything. If this resonates with you, if you're someone who believes that small decisions can create massive transformations, then you belong in this community. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the thousands of listeners who are learning to recognize these pivotal moments in their own lives. Because your garage moment might be closer than you think. Jeff Bezos didn't just leave Wall Street to sell books online. He left certainty to chase possibility. He left a world where success was measured in quarterly bonuses to build a world where success is measured in decades. He left a job where he was making money for other people to start a company that would eventually employ over 1 million people around the world. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Sometimes, the best career move is the one that looks like career suicide. Sometimes, the smartest financial decision is the one that makes your accountant cry. Sometimes, the path to extraordinary success starts with doing something that looks extraordinarily stupid. That's it for today's episode of Small Cause, Big Effect. Remember, the next time someone tells you your business idea is crazy, just remember that in 1994, everyone thought selling books online was crazy too. The difference between crazy and genius is usually just time and persistence. And who knows? Maybe the next trillion-dollar company is starting right now in someone's garage, founded by someone who is brave enough to quit their day job to chase their dream. Maybe it's starting in your garage. Until next time, keep dreaming big, thinking long-term, and remember, the future belongs to those who are willing to build it, one book order at a time. And if this episode changed how you think about risk and opportunity, show us some love with a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And we'll see you next week for another story of how small causes create big effects.